What's up everybody, thank you for tuning in to another video. In today's video, we're going to be installing the Eibach Sportline spring kit for the GR Corolla, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Also, we're going to be doing the upper and lower control arms from Cusco. I'll be linking that video in the description and also in the cards whenever you're watching the video and we get to that point. So make sure you stick around. It's going to be a cool video. Also, I have some shots at the end of what the car is going to look like after it's lowered. And before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button for some more GR Corolla content. Now let's get into it. Let's get this bad boy jacked up. You're starting this. Please, my mom would be so proud of me. I finally bought like a set of jack stands that have a lock. Isn't that cool? You're welcome, Mom. Come on! This is gonna be the brake line. The reason why we did that is because this trailing arm is gonna fall down. I don't want this to be like hanging too much and have too much tension on it. Okay, we got the trailing arm on the bottom here, and we're gonna loosen this up. I'm gonna use box wrench on the back just to hold that nut. This will give me room to hit the impact on this side. We're gonna jack up this trailing arm. And if I didn't say already, that bolt and the nut on the trailing arm is a 17 millimeter. Okay, that's up. There we go. All right, now that spring should just be able to pop right on. Oh, just push down the trailing arm, just pull it out. These are the bump stops. This is the OEM one. This is the one that comes in the kit. That looks like a solid inch in difference. That is going to limit your amount of travel before you bottom out. And if you want this to be more like an OEM feel, then you're going to want to put this one in. I was on Corolla Facebook group and I was asking if anybody has just used the OEM bump stops for the rear shocks or if people have actually used the one that came in the kit. And the reason why I wanted to know that was because it is so much more work to take the shock out, and I feel like a lot of people are not doing that. A couple of videos I've seen, I know people aren't doing that, but I want to show you right now because I ended up getting it out and it was very hard. And I want to say, if you don't have a lift where you can get the car up in the air at least like 3 feet, you're gonna have a really difficult time getting off the shock. I did find a way to get it off, and I'm gonna show you that in this video. I'm gonna explain what I'm talking about because there's one bolt that you cannot get out that seems basically impossible unless you have a lift. I'm going to show you how to do this in the garage when you have the car a foot off the ground. So let's go. This is a regular thread. It is this nut is not a reverse thread on both sides. It's a 22. You're going to have to use you know, the garage style. Just use your leg strength to get this off. Once you do, I'm going to show you the rest of the technique that we're going to have to do to get this shock out without taking this bolt out. You know, I hope a lot of you end up doing this shock absorber bump stop. It kind of does suck because this lower control arm here, it has to come out, and that's the only way that we can get a wrench onto that bolt on the bottom. This right here is going to get loosened up on both sides. This part has to completely come out on the top of the control arm, the upper control arm on the knuckle side, and we have to loosen that bolt on the body side of the control arm. We're not taking this out, we're loosening that bolt and we're taking this off of the knuckle. Bottom lower control arm absolutely has to come out so that we can get a wrench on the bottom. So yeah, let's go. I can tell you right now, I'm really not that excited because I just put all of this in and I just torqued everything to specification. Basically, I have to take it all out and do it all again. So first thing we're gonna do is this this little plastic tray. We're gonna come at it from the bottom. There's gonna be 2 clips, 2 little push clips, and 1 10mm screw. We just need to break this free so this can drop down. To take out the lower control arm here, that is a 14 on this side, and on the rear of the car on this side is gonna be a 17. We're gonna have a box wrench over here and a socket on the left. Once you get that loose, get the nut with your fingers on the other side. A lot easier. Ram that bolt out. We'll get that in a second once we loosen the other one. We're going to loosen up this bolt on the bottom so we can get out this lower control arm. This is going to be a 17 on both sides. Now we take that top bolt out. You're going to just lift up, push forward, and then you're going to pull down. It's going to come right out. This is going to be literally some uncut YouTube garage footage. We got the 22 on the back of that nut on the shock, and I'm literally just going to lay down, break this loose with my leg because I don't have a lift. This is all the leverage I got. So make sure it's tight and you're not stripping anything. There we go. Comment down below if you have had to lay on the ground and kick a wrench with your leg before. I cannot be the only one here. So we're just gonna go ahead and remove that nut, 22. And it does help if you have a long 22. Trust me, that is what you need. This was at Harbor Freight. I had to buy a full kit just for that tool. It's full commitment to the channel. We're taking this out. We're gonna loosen the one in the back. This side over here is a 14, and then we're gonna hold a box wrench on a 17 over here. Now we're gonna take this spring out so we could have more room because we were jumping the gun. We're gonna loosen the top of this control arm. We're not gonna take it off. And you should be able to just put a quick 17 mil right on the back, and that'll just lock that in place. 14, if I can fit my 14 back here. Not off, we're loose. Now that we got the upper control arm loose, we're gonna take a 17 millimeter and get these bolts off on the top of the shock. It's hard to see what I'm about to show you here, but that's the only way that you can get this to go down a lot, because what you have to do is compress this shock, compress it as much as it goes, push down, and then now you can slide it off the bolt without taking the bolt off. Now we have this completely out, and we are gonna pop this cover off, which is super easy with a flathead, but this bottom piece is gonna spin. I have to show you that or else someone's gonna get injured. All right, so a couple things that I'm gonna do here. I wanna protect my feet because this is gonna wanna spin. So the bottom of this right here is gonna spin when you hit this. Same with this bracket, it's gonna spin as well. So I'm using these pads, tighten it up, and holding it with my hand. Don't break your wrist, but use an impact. Once that breaks free, 100% not gonna come off all the way, because honestly, why would it? On the top of this strut, there's gonna be a 6 millimeter Allen, and then you're gonna take your 17 wrench, and just enough to where you can get that sucker on there. Should be good like that. And you're gonna wanna hold it tight. Then you're kinda gonna have to inch this off. And for me, this is the only way I've found that works. All right, so now we have the nut comes off, move your Allen, and then this will just slide out from your shock absorber. And once we have our shock absorber free, but our bump stop is going to be located inside. So I'm going to show you how to get this off. Now you're just going to take a flathead screwdriver, stick it in, and just work it in, or just rip it apart. So at this point, I'm just going to push down on this bump stop because we want that thing out of there. Just have to push it out. Again, you can see the difference here. The OEM one's on the left, the Eibach kit is on the right. So that's about an inch of travel that you're going to be gaining back to give you that OEM feel. So let's go ahead and throw this back in. Okay, we're just going to throw it in like this, straight down. Just take like the hook of this and just push it down. So one thing to keep in mind is you don't want to have the bump stop all the way on the top yet, because you want to be able to have a little bit of flex here so you can get this lip to push into that metal, and then you'll push the bump stop up. So with that amount of flex, that went in super easy. And then like I said before, same technique. You're just going to take this box wrench and just push it on. Now we're going to take this, throw it right back on again, put our nut on the top. At this point, at least the last one that I did on the other side, my impact was able to drive this all the way down first try without having to use an Allen. So I am going to do that again. Watch your wrist because that thing wants to fly out of your hands. But you'll know if it's loose because this part will still have play in it. But if it's tight, then you're all good to go. As far as putting this back into the car, we are going to put the bottom side in first. Compress this as much as you can. Initially, this will help you, promise. And then you can let it go up. We're going to put the nut in, but we're not going to tighten it all the way. We're just going to put it on because when this thing's moving, if you tighten it, it'll lock it in place. So we're just gonna put it on, just hand like snug, so it has some play. You wanna jack up the bottom of the knuckle, you can do it on the bottom lower control arm side. But what we wanna do is jack this up. We wanna keep this in line at the same time. Outside. And now I'm absolutely gonna tighten these up right now. Sorry guys, no torque spec on this one. If you're doing the upper and lower control arms, now is the time when you want to pause the video, and I'm going to link the video in the top if you guys want to see how to do those control arms. We're going to do that right now, and then after you're done watching that, head back over to this video and finish it up with me. So for everybody else in this video, nothing's going to change for you, so just keep watching. All right, so now I still have the jack up on the knuckle, and I'm going to put the bolt through the upper control arm. And just so you know, the torque spec on this is going to be 54 foot-pounds on the control arm on this bolt and that bolt. Also for the lower control arm, 54 foot-pounds on both sides. We're going to tighten this up now. Again, that's a 14 on this side, 17 on that side. This one has to be torqued from laying underneath. And that box wrench will just sit there and it'll just lock in place, which is very helpful. All right, that's torqued. Now we're going to torque the upper. We're going to throw in this bracket here. There's a little notch that has to go into a little bit of a dimple there, and then we'll be able to get that in. This thing's actually kind of tricky to get in. I think that's a 12. Tighten her up. Then we got the little bracket behind. Slide that brake line in. That's a 14. Now we're going to drop this jack out of the way. Again, I'm sorry, I do not have a torque spec for this. This is torque spec leg tight. Make sure that when you're putting this lower control arm in that you are going above that sway bar. Now we want to make sure we put on both of those bolts before we tighten one of them. Alright, when we put this in, you obviously want to make sure that the logo is facing upwards and not upside down. We're going to put that on the spring. Put the spring in, push down, and that thing's going to line right up. I just whacked the trailing arm or something and wasn't paying attention, and it came back up actually on both sides. It just tore through like the rubber boot and there's grease coming out. Obviously I can't leave it like that. It has to get fixed. I'm gonna show you what I was talking about. This thing like slid up and you can see the grease coming out. It's actually even worse on the other side. The fact that this happened on both sides, I'm just gonna say that probably isn't too hard to do this. I just wanted to show you guys so that you don't make this stupid mistake. We had a couple issues going into this at this point. I had that bushing pop off on the bottom of the knuckle and I couldn't find a replacement for that, so I did end up fixing that. I'm going to show you guys what I ended up doing. I think I fixed it and I think it's going to work. Alright, so now we're under the car on the bottom knuckle. This is where that boot ripped off. I was able to take a flathead, work it all the way around here and get it back on. I honestly did not even think that it was possible. I was wiggling this thing around trying to get it over that little lip for probably 40 minutes to an hour. If you want to take in both sides, probably an hour and a half. But I ended up putting a zip tie around this. I found a very skinny one. So if this does happen to you, I'll let you know. I'll type down in the comments in this video later on if this thing is still holding on. It looks like it will. I just zipped it pretty tight. Still able to move freely. But I do want to say, whenever you're taking that off, the trailing arm from the knuckle, be careful when you're jacking it up, because that's the problem. It doesn't want to line up to the knuckle on that bushing whenever you jack it up. If you get it hung up on that bushing, it's going to rip it right off and you're going to be in the same boat as me. So take your time, make sure that's centered as you're jacking it up. We have to line up this hole using this jack. Make sure that you're pulling this over as you're jacking it up so you're not hitting that rubber grommet off. But we got to get that hole to line up here, and then we're going to shove the bolt through, torque it up, and then we'll be all done here. If the bolt isn't lining up, what you can do is you can just take a flathead screwdriver and just put it through the back side and just mess around with it until it lines up. But that's all I had to do. That part isn't that bad. But you do have to like take a hammer to it to beat it through. Torque it to spec. Okay. Last thing we're going to do is just button up that little plastic shield on the bottom, which is going to be 2 clips in that screw. And then we're going to throw the wheel back on, torque it down. This is slammed. Oh, I love it. Holy crap, dude. They're not even settled yet. I can't even fit 2 fingers in here. It's the morning time here. We left off with the last thing that we did was the rear of the car. We finished that up. We buttoned it up. Everything is all good to go, and I'm happy about that. We're going to be doing the passenger side strut today, and I'm going to show you how to do that. If you guys have any questions, make sure that you type them in the comments. I'll try to answer them the best that I can. I'm obviously not a mechanic, but I've done the job, so I can maybe help you out in some kind of way. I try to make these videos as detailed as humanly possible. Make sure you like and subscribe, and let's get into it. All right, from here, I'm going to show you how to take off this cowl. A lot of people are not removing the cowl all the way. I'm actually going to show you how. I'm not going to go into super crazy detail. If you want that crazy crazy detail. I'll link another video up top where I did this strut bar install and I show really in depth on how to take this apart. But we're gonna get into this. We got 4 push clips, take off the wipers, and then 2 little clip panels on the cowl and you pull it off. It's really easy. All right, we got push clip number 1. Then we got push clip number 2. These actually don't come out all the way. They're just gonna lift up. Just these 2 right here. They do not come out all the way. So just keep that in mind. And then these end ones do. This is number 4. We're gonna take off top of these clips. 2 14mm. Should come right off. It's a little precise. You kind of just have to make sure you bend it and angle it. Bend it down so it's coming off straight up. We just got a clip up here. Push down, pop up. And that should come right off. Just pull it down, lift up. We got the wheel off. On the passenger side, we're gonna remove this whole brake line. So we have a 10mm right here, and that's gonna just lift out. 14mm here. And then you can just pull this brake line out. We don't want that connected. And then we have a little clip here. This thing's kind of tricky. You just have to work at it. There we go. Okay, this one's gonna be hard to show you, so I'm gonna just point to it. It's gonna be right here, 10mm. Now we're gonna put a jack underneath the control arm. This is so it doesn't drop on us. Not a lot of pressure, just enough pressure just to keep it from falling. We're gonna take off these 3 14mm on the top, but we're gonna leave one of them on a little bit, which is going to be the closest one to us. So that one is on, we're going to leave that on. Take these off. I also figured out that I don't have to remove this because on the other side, these bolts just went in and out really easy and I didn't have to take that out completely. We are going to take out these 2 bolts here. If you don't have an impact like me that has 600 foot-pounds, this thing barely takes those off. You're gonna have a hard time with a breaker bar. I'm sure you could do it. I haven't even tried. But we're gonna hold that with a 22 and we're gonna take a 22 to the other side. Hit this on the highest setting right now and we're just gonna let it rip. We gotta take off the sway bar end link. There's just a little cap on here. You're just gonna literally pull that off. We have a 17mm on here. Pop that off, move that out of the way. Now we're gonna take a hammer and tap out these bolts. And I do not have a rubber mallet, so I'm just gonna put a microfiber right here. Yeah, there we go. Too much tension on the jack. Be careful you don't let this knuckle just slam down. You don't want the hub to spin at all. We want to keep everything in line. I'm going to pull the strut up, take off this last bolt, and this thing's going to fall down. All right, drop the bolt. So this thing's going to come down. Like I said, be very careful. And now that you guys can actually see what I'm talking about, where I screwed up before was this little, this axle on the CV inner joint. So you do not want to let this hub spin at all when this is off, because if this pulls down and this drops and swings forward, like right now, I can angle this up inward from the top. But if this gets pulled down too much from the top and you spin this by accident, you could pull that out, the joint out, and then whenever you put this up and go to push it back, this actually won't even move at all. And what you have to do is rotate the axle by spinning these. I just put a lug nut on here and spun this around, and you just keep pushing and then it will just click in all of a sudden. I got my spring compressors on here. I bought these at Harbor Freight for like 40 bucks. I put on 2, the best that I could. It kind of sucks because it like hits this strut. It just basically gets in the way. We'll be able to get it off. We'll probably have to wiggle it a little bit. You don't even need these when you put on the new one because it's a shorter spring. We're gonna have a little rubber guy here. Just gonna lift that off. Don't forget to put that back on. So we're using our lower impact on this. So you don't even need that much impact. Take this off. 19 on the top. Just pay attention to how everything came off, because it is gonna go on the same way. How about that? Rip this off. We're gonna have a spacer on the top of here, and we're gonna remove this top hat. This stuff needs to be orientated the same way because there is an angle on that little piece that's on the bottom of this top hat. And then we have a washer. We have the bump stop. Come on. All right. Eibach is going to give you a piece of paper that's going to show you the part numbers, so just pay attention. I'm seeing a lot of videos of people putting the bump stops on the wrong position. They're putting the rears on the fronts, and I've seen at least 3 videos on YouTube of people doing that, so make sure this is the front. We want to make sure that there's more travel, not less travel. Okay, and we're just going to remove this sleeve by just lifting up on the bottom here. There's just a couple clips. Okay, and that's going to come off. We're going to reuse that. And now we can take our coil spring off. Alright, keep in mind when putting this back together, this little piece has a hole in the bottom of it and it goes over that nipple right there. The strut is just going to line up directly on that so we can start putting this thing back together. Take our new coil spring. These pliers are going to be really helpful because we're going to pull the sleeve down over these little threads here. So make sure that the logo is facing up so that you can read Eibach. You want to make sure you can read Eibach from the orientation that it's standing right here. Let that fall into place. Now we're going to take our sleeve. So now we just pulled that sleeve down using these little pliers. Just take your time with it. We're going to take the bump stop next. Eibach's bump stop. Throw it on. It's going to go on here. And then we're going to take this piece, which it only goes on one way. You can just see there's a flat spot on both sides here. And there's also a flat spot in this hole. Flat spot on the strut mount threads. So it only goes on one way. Forgot the washer. Washer goes on the bump stop. Okay, so once that's on, you can spin it around, and this is where everybody's having that issue about the turning the wheel at parking lot speed, clicking. It's because this little notch right here has to be lined up with the top of the strut whenever you put it back in the car. It goes in a certain way, and if it's not that way, it is going to click. So that's pretty much everybody's problem that they're having with this clicking. That's what it is. It's not because you don't have enough rubber here. It's because this little mark right here has to be lined up. So now, like, there's really not that much tension, as you guys can see. You don't need a spring compressor. Take our little washer, take our nut. You can literally push this down with one hand, spin that on with the other. And at this point, I don't have a torque spec for you, but I will say this, just crank her on. Put this thing in our highest speed, 19 millimeter. You definitely just want to be careful that you're not gonna freaking bust your hand. And now that can spin freely, and that is the correct orientation that we want to put this back in the car. And do not forget the rubber mount. As I throw this in ever so carefully, I'm going to take my other hand and guide it up there, and I'm going to put a nut on the top so I can lock it in place. Check out these holes real quick. Yo. Whew. So let's go ahead and throw these bolts onto the car, and we're just going to push this hub up, line up the bolts, throw them in. So we are going to start on the lowest bolt here, and it looks like we might have the car jacked up a little bit too much. You might have to mess around with the jack to get it right where you want it. There we go. Once you get the bottom bolt lined up, it should be a lot easier. We're just going to throw it at the lowest possible setting, and we're going to let them deal with it. Alright, I got that camber bolt on. Just had to wiggle the jack around, that's all it was. I'm going to tighten this up. Now's the time that you want to tighten down the top of these strut bolts. We're going to torque these down to spec, 37 foot-pounds. Now we're throwing on the sway bar end link. Pops right into place super easily. It's a 17 millimeter. That's going to be 55 foot-pounds torque. Pop the cap on. Take our brake line. That through that top notch. And I'll just put all these brackets back on. That's a 10. Alright guys, we're pretty much there. I'll be lowering it down in just a minute. And I'm going to lower it because to put the cowl stuff on is so much easier when it's lower to the ground, so I don't have to lean up. Up boy, low. Alright, let's move the other car. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to put this back together on the top, and then we're all done, and we can pull this outside, have a good look at it. So we're going to start by putting on this wiper. Put in this little weird thing, whatever this thing is, snap it in. Now that we're all done with this, let's start this baby up, pull it outside, and I'm gonna give you guys a look on what it looks like now. Yo, oh my gosh, this is freaking crazy. I know my wife keeps saying I need to stop saying this is crazy and this is insane. Those are the only two words I know, I guess. Look how low this is. 2-inch drop all the way. Couldn't be more happy with how this looks. It's slammed. So I originally had content for this and I lost it all. Actually, I think I just straight up deleted it. So I'm not gonna lie, guys, this is like weeks later after we've had this installed. I don't want to pretend like this is like I just pulled it out. I lost all the footage. So we're back on this. So while I'm here and it's like 2 weeks later to a month, I guess I could just give you guys like a tiny review about it. I mean, honestly, if you try to put your fingers in here, like you can barely even fit one straight across. I'm actually pretty shocked that Eibach released a kit this low. I think a lot of that helps because the fenders, again, over here, can barely even go straight across. The fenders are just so wide. But since I've been riding on this for about a month, I'm just gonna give you guys a quick review on what I think about the way that this rides. So if you're driving aggressively, it's going to rub a little bit. I don't really get necessarily many rubs on the front unless I'm pulling into a spot and it's like a curb or like a higher grade or something like that. If I'm like really getting on the back roads, this will rub. It'll rub a little bit. Basically, my review on this is if you're gonna track drive, I'd recommend this for track driving. Your handling is gonna be reduced a little bit. You're probably going to want something a little bit higher up, and if you do want to put spacers on this, I don't think that's gonna work for track driving. I think the only way this would work for track driving is if you just have no spacers on it. Rides completely amazing and similar to OEM. I think maybe a tad stiffer. Overall, I'm super happy with how this turned out. I'm just super excited. Like, this was a big job. A couple things went wrong. Pretty much, isn't that how car stuff goes anyway? You like plan that it's gonna take 30 minutes and it takes you 3 hours, whatever. This was supposed to take me maybe like 4 hours in my head and ended up taking like 2 days because I was running into issues and needed tools. So if you don't have all the tools yourself, I recommend that you just take it somewhere, have them do it for you. But if you do have all the tools, don't be scared to tackle this because it's really not that bad. You can do this by yourself. You don't need anybody to help you. But that's pretty much it. That's my little review. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this helped you guys out. If you have any questions, type down in the comments. I'll try to answer them the best that I possibly can. But make sure that you subscribe for some more GR Corolla content on the channel. And also, if you want to see this bad boy on the channel as well, we're going to be having some more videos here coming out soon with this car. So stay tuned. Whoop. Thank you guys. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.